And good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. I do appreciate you being with me. Pardon me. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I hope you'll visit my website, donkpreston.com or bibleprophecy.com. I appreciate the response to our book offer on AD 70, A Shadow of the, quote, real end, unquote. I'm sort of kind of looking for it here on my desk in the midst of my piles or otherwise. Anyway, one of the key issues surrounding Matthew 25:31 and following is an argument made by an awful lot of futurists, amillennialists, and postmillennialists especially, when they tell us, okay, yeah, Christ came on the clouds with the angels, with a shout, with the sound of a trumpet, in power and great glory, and he gathered the elect in AD 70. Oh, but wait, AD 70 was only a type and a shadow of the real end of the age. That's what we're told. That is an increasingly popular argument among futurists because they see the undeniable language, the temporal delimitation of the language about the coming of the Son of Man. So I wrote this book, and last Thursday I shared with you about whether or not AD 70 was a shadow, a type of anything yet to come. And I have in this book 15 reasons why AD 70 was not a shadow, not a type of anything else. It was, in fact, the coming of the Lord. So if you go to my website, donkpreston.com and bibleprophecy.com, and if you order the book, make sure that you mention that you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll refund your shipping. Now then, yesterday was a tad, not a lot, but just a little bit of a recapitulation of the concept of the gathering of the nations, because in Matthew chapter 25, 31 and 32, we have the coming of the Son of Man, power and great glory, with the angels, to sit on the throne of his glory. Then shall be gathered together all nations before him. The word that is translated as gather is sunexthesatai, a future form of synagogue. As I've shared with you, and boy, I got to tell you folks, this is so incredibly important. Okay? This word, although it can be, as I noted yesterday, episynagoge, synagogue, all of the cognates. Yes, it can refer to normal, mundane geographical gatherings. When used eschatologically, it is not used that way, as I demonstrated yesterday. Now, one thing that I want to point out to you today, the focus of today's video, is the fact that this gathering of Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following, is the end time gathering. Okay, that's totally uncontroversial. Everybody agrees with that. What many commentators, Bible students completely, totally miss is that as the end time gathering, it is the fulfillment of Israel's, quote, final, unquote, feast day. It is the last of the three fall feast days. You got Rosh Hashanah, which was a type and a shadow of the coming day of judgment. You have Yom Kippur. Now, all of this took place in the 7th month of Israel's calendar. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Now, as I have said many times, and as I say in the book that I'm currently writing, entitled The Last Day, The Last Hour, The Last Trumpet Resurrection, we have a tendency to dichotomize between these feasts and to delineate between them so radically that we lose sight of the fact that in Jewish thought, they were inseparably linked with one another. Were they separate feasts in one regard? Well, yes, because they had a different function. They signified something, that there were different nuances to them. But in the rabbinic writings, in the Jewish writings, there was an interplay, an interlocking connection between them. So, here's what I want you to see. The last feast day, now there was one other feast day, okay, and it was the 8th day. You know, the final feast, as we like to term it, that last feast was the feast of Sukkot. It was the feast of the harvest. It was sometimes called the joy of the nations. Sometimes it was simply called the feast. The Jews called it the feast of our joy. But guess what it was also called? The feast of ingathering. And in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, Hebrew Old Testament, that term, ingathering, is translated as the synagogue. Do you catch the power of that? God foretold that in the last days, the nations would be gathered to Zion. This is found in Isaiah chapter 2, it is 2 through 4. It is found in Isaiah 46. It's found in Isaiah 60 through 66, on and on. And again, in the book that I'm currently working on, I document chapter after chapter after chapter. Particularly, I focus on Isaiah. Isaiah 54, Isaiah 52. They all use either episynagogue or synagogue or synagogue to speak of the messianic ingathering at the end of the age, when the righteous remnant would be gathered and the nations, the pagans, the Gentiles, would be invited into Israel's salvation. So let me reiterate how important it is to see the interconnection between Matthew 25:31 and following and the synagogue as promised in the Old Testament. Because you see, in the Old Testament, the synagogue, the episynagogue, was to occur at the time of the establishment of the kingdom. It was to occur at the time of the resurrection. You catch the power of that? This is one of the reasons why in Jewish literature you find the rabbis and the commentators recognizing that the Feast of Harvest was the Feast of the Resurrection. It is the ingathering. Well, in Matthew chapter 25, verse 32, we have the gathering, sunex thesatai, future form, of the ingathering. When? At the time of the resurrection. Does anybody doubt that Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is the time of the resurrection? Well, no, they don't. So, Sukkot, the feast of the ingathering, is the time of the resurrection. This is brought out in Isaiah 52, Ezekiel 37. I mean, look, as I said, they're just a raft. You know, there's a stack of these verses in the Old Testament. Jeremiah 31 is a great passage about the end time gathering. So I'm not going to try to document all of those passages for you, They'll be in the book if I ever get it finished. But again, the point of it is, ladies and gentlemen, the ingathering, the synagogue of Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following, is the end time gathering, the final ingathering of what? Israel's feast days. It is absolutely inappropriate. It is totally wrong to look at Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following and say, oh, well, that's at the end of the Christian age. That has nothing to do with Israel. That has nothing to do with the law and the fulfillment of the law. Ladies and gentlemen, unless you can divorce the concept of resurrection, unless you can divorce the concept of the end time gathering, unless, pardon me, unless you can divorce the episynagogue, the synagogue, and the synagogue from the episynagogue of Matthew chapter 24, 31, and for that matter, Matthew 23, 37, unless you can divorce these passages from one another, then the gathering of Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is in fact the end time fulfillment of Israel's last feast day, the Feast of Sukkot, the Feast of the Ingathering, i.e., the Feast of the Resurrection. So what does that mean? Well, as I will share with you in the morning on the flip side, that means if Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is not fulfilled, the law of Moses has not been fulfilled. If the law of Moses has not been fulfilled, the law of Moses, every jot and every tittle, remains valid. Are you ready for that? Is that what you teach? The disparity, the disjunction, especially in the amillennial and the postmillennial world, the divorcement of eschatology from Israel's feast days is one of the greatest, unfortunate, and fatal errors in the entire eschatological paradigm of amillennialism and postmillennialism. I'm going to demonstrate that on the flip side. I'll see you there.